In 2007, two broke roommates in San Francisco couldn't make rent, so they blew up three air mattresses, threw them on their living room floor, and rented them out to strangers for $80 a night. That's it. That's the whole idea. 18 years later, that idea is worth around $86 billion. dollars. It has over 8 million listings in more than 200 countries. It has hosted more than 2 billion guests. And along the way, it didn't just build a company, it completely rewired how the entire world travels. This is the story of Airbnb. Let's go back to the beginning because the origin story is genuinely one of the best in business history. Our two main characters are Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia. They met as students at the Rhode Island School of Design. So, right off the bat, remember this. The founders of a company that would take on the global hotel industry were not hotel people. They were not finance people. They were designers. That matters, and we'll come back to it. After graduation, Gebbia moved to San Francisco and convinced Chesky to come too. They ended up sharing a three-bedroom apartment. The problem? Rent was expensive, money was tight, and they were staring down a rent payment they couldn't cover. Now, here's where luck and timing walk in. A big international design conference was coming to San Francisco, and every single hotel in the city was booked solid. There were designers flying in from all over the world with nowhere to stay. And Gebbia had a thought. We have a spare room, we have some floor space, and there are a bunch of people just like us who need a place to crash. So they bought three air mattresses, and they put up a simple website called airbedandbreakfast.com. The pitch was basically, sleep on an air mattress in our apartment, and we'll give you breakfast and show you around the city. They charged $80 a night. Three guests showed up, and it worked. They made their rent. But more importantly, sitting in that apartment with those strangers, they realized something. This wasn't just a way to make rent. People liked this. It was cheaper than a hotel, and it came with something a hotel could never offer: an actual local, a real connection, a place that felt like a home instead of a box. So they decided to go for it. To build a real website, they brought in a third co-founder, Nathan Blakarczyk, a brilliant engineer and one of Gebbia's former roommates. Now the team was complete, two designers and an engineer. And then, almost nothing happened. Here's the part everyone skips. Airbnb was not an overnight success. It was for a long time a spectacular failure. Investors thought they were crazy, and I mean that literally. The founders would sit down in meetings and watch people's faces go blank. The idea of paying to sleep in a stranger's home or letting a stranger sleep in yours sounded insane in 2008. One investor they pitched later admitted he just couldn't see it. They got rejected over and over and over again. The company was bleeding money and drowning in credit card debt. And this leads to maybe the most famous hustle in startup history. It was 2008, an election year, Obama versus McCain. So Chesky and Gebbia, being designers, made a limited run of novelty breakfast cereal. They designed two collectible boxes, Obama O's and Captain McCain's. They hand-assembled them, numbered each box, and sold them for around $40 a piece. It sounds ridiculous. It was ridiculous. But it worked. They raised around $30,000 selling cereal, which kept the lights on and kept the dream alive a little longer. And that cereal is actually what saved them. Because that hustle caught the eye of Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, the most famous startup accelerator in the world. Graham didn't even love the Airbnb idea at first. But when he heard how they funded themselves selling presidential cereal boxes, he thought, if these guys can talk people into buying $40 cereal, maybe they can talk people into this crazy air mattress thing too. In January 2009, Y Combinator gave them $20,000 in exchange for 6% of the company. Just so we're clear on how that turned out. That $20,000 bet would eventually be worth billions. It's often called one of the best investments in the history of startups. Graham also gave them one piece of advice that changed everything. Their few users were mostly in New York, but the founders were in Silicon Valley. So Graham told them, go to your users. Get on a plane. So they flew to New York and started meeting hosts face to face. And they noticed two things. One, hosts had no idea how to price their places. And two, the photos were terrible. Dark, blurry cell phone photos that made beautiful apartments look like crime scenes. So Chesky and Gebbia did something that doesn't scale, something no real tech company would do. They grabbed a nice camera, went door to door, and took gorgeous professional photos of their hosts' homes themselves. Bookings immediately shot up. It turned out the product was fine. People just needed to actually see how nice these places were. That obsession with how things look and feel, that designer's instinct, that became Airbnb's superpower. A few months later, in April 2009, the legendary venture firm Sequoia Capital took a chance and invested around $585,000. At that point, Airbnb had about 2,500 listings. Today, it has over 8 million. They shortened the name to just Airbnb, and the rocket ship finally left the ground. So how did a serial-funded air mattress company end up threatening an entire century-old industry? To understand that, you have to understand how travel used to work. For basically the entire 20th century, if you traveled, you stayed in a hotel. And the hotel industry was dominated by a handful of massive corporations, Marriott, Hilton, and a few others. They owned the buildings, they set the prices, and the overwhelming majority of the money you spent flowed up to a giant company and its shareholders. Airbnb flipped that entire model upside down. Instead of a corporation owning 1,000 identical rooms, Airbnb said, what if millions of regular people could rent out the space they already have? Your spare room, your apartment while you're away. That cabin you only use a few weekends a year. And this is the part that's genuinely revolutionary, and the part I think doesn't get said enough. In the old model, a giant corporation collected the money. In the Airbnb model, the host collects the money. And roughly 90% of Airbnb hosts are individuals, not companies. Everyday, normal people. Think about what that actually means. Since the company started, hosts have collectively earned over $300 billion. That's $300 billion that, in the old hotel world, would have gone almost entirely to big corporations and their shareholders. And instead, it went into the pockets of regular people. A teacher renting out a room in the summer, a family paying down their mortgage, a retiree. And by the way, seniors are one of the fastest growing groups of hosts on the whole platform. The typical host in the US earns around $14,000 a year in extra income. That's not quit your job money for most people, but it's real money. It's a mortgage payment. It's a car. It's a vacation. It's breathing room. And it's going to a person, not a boardroom. And for some people, hosting became a lot more than a side hustle. Because Airbnb didn't just create a way to travel. It created an entire investment opportunity that never existed before. Suddenly, a spare property wasn't just a spare property. It was potential income. People started buying homes specifically to host. They turned basements into rentals, backyards into tiny home getaways, ordinary houses into little businesses. For the first time, everyday people could get into the hospitality business without owning a hotel, without a huge staff, without corporate backing. You, a normal person, could list a property and be in business by the weekend. That had simply never been possible before. Airbnb handed the tools of an entire industry to regular people. The payments, the global audience, the booking system, the trust, all of it, in an app on your phone. And that app is a huge part of why this worked. Remember, designers built this company, and it shows. Booking a place on Airbnb is almost stupidly easy. You open the app, you type in where you're going, you see beautiful photos, honest reviews, a clear price, and you book. That's it. For guests, it just feels good to use. But here's what people forget. It's just as easy on the other side. Becoming a host is shockingly simple. You take some photos, you write a description, you set your price and the dates you're available, and you're live to a global audience of hundreds of millions of travelers. Airbnb handles the hard parts, the payments, the messaging, the security deposit, the support. All the scary, complicated machinery of running a hospitality business is just handled. That frictionlessness on both sides is exactly why it scaled to millions of hosts. But easy doesn't matter if you don't trust it. And trust was the single biggest obstacle Airbnb ever faced. Remember, the whole idea sounded insane, precisely because it asked strangers to trust each other. So Airbnb engineered trust into the platform. The key was the two-way review system. After every stay, the guest reviews the host, and the host reviews the guest. And here's the clever part. Neither side sees the other's review until both are submitted. That stops people from writing dishonest, retaliatory reviews. It keeps everyone honest. Over time, that built up this massive, self-policing web of reputation. You're not trusting a stranger anymore. You're trusting someone with 40 glowing reviews. And on top of that sits the Superhost system, which is basically Airbnb's badge of excellence. You don't apply for it, and you can't buy it. Airbnb checks your stats automatically every 3 months, and to earn that Superhost badge, you have to hit 4 hard targets. A rating of at least 4.8 out of 5, at least 10 stays in the past year, almost no cancellations, and you have to respond to 90% of your messages fast. Hit all 4, and you get the badge. And that little badge is powerful. Superhosts show up higher in search, earn more trust, and can make significantly more money than regular hosts. It's a system that quietly rewards people for being genuinely great at this and gives guests a shortcut to knowing this one's a safe bet. Now let's talk about the biggest lifestyle shift of all, because Airbnb didn't just change where we stay. For some people, it changed how they live. There is now an entire class of people who have basically given up on traditional renting. No lease, no permanent address. Instead, they live in Airbnbs full-time, moving from one to the next, working remotely from a laptop while they travel the world. A month in Lisbon, a month in Mexico City, a month in Bali, all of it booked through one app. And Airbnb noticed. Long stays, 28 days or longer, have become one of the fastest growing parts of the whole business, a huge chunk of the nights people book. The rise of remote work and the rise of Airbnb hit at exactly the same moment. And together they unlocked something that would have sounded like pure fantasy 20 years ago. The ability to be at home, anywhere on Earth, indefinitely. Your office is wherever the Wi-Fi is. And your home is whatever city you felt like waking up in this month. And this is where Airbnb gets really fun. Because a hotel room is a hotel room. But an Airbnb can be almost anything. Want to know the wildest part of the whole platform? Airbnb has a category that is nothing but insane. One-of-a-kind places. Tree houses you can actually sleep in, way up in the canopy. Converted lighthouses, windmills, caves, glass cabins under the northern lights, actual castles, little floating homes on the water, places that look like they belong in a fantasy movie because you can genuinely book them for the night. And Airbnb leaned all the way into this. A few years ago, they launched a category called Icons, stays and experiences at places you thought you could only dream about. They turned the house from the movie up into a real floatable home. They made a stay at a replica of the X-Mansion from Marvel's X-Men, a night at the Ferrari Museum. Living, breathing pieces of pop culture you can actually step inside. And the range is the truly wild part. On the same app, on the same night, you can rent a single spare bedroom somewhere in Southeast Asia for just a few dollars. Or you can rent an entire sprawling mansion in the Hollywood Hills for thousands of dollars a night. Budget backpacker or movie star, it's all in the same little app. There is genuinely something on Airbnb for every single person, at every single budget, on the entire planet. A hotel chain could never offer that. Nobody could, until now. Now, to be fair, it hasn't all been perfect, and it'd be dishonest not to mention it. Airbnb's explosive growth has caused real friction. In some popular cities, so many homes got turned into short-term rentals that locals worried it was making housing harder to find and afford. Cities like New York pushed back with tough new rules, and travelers have grumbled about cleaning fees and checkout chore lists. Airbnb's had to adapt, tightening its rules, getting more transparent about fees, and working with cities instead of just steamrolling them. Growing pains for something that grew this fast? Probably unavoidable. But it's a real part of the story, and the company is still working through it. But step back and look at the whole picture, and what Airbnb pulled off is genuinely staggering. Two designers who couldn't make rent, selling cereal to survive, turned 3 air mattresses into a company that reshaped travel for the entire planet. They took an industry that was locked up by giant corporations and handed the keys to everyday people. They made it possible to feel at home anywhere in the world. They turned spare rooms into income, ordinary people into entrepreneurs, and the whole globe into a place you could actually live in, one booking at a time. Hotels used to sell you a room. Airbnb sold you the entire world and gave regular people the chance to own a piece of it. Not bad for two broke guys and an air mattress. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.